welcome back to Conversations with BC Hepatitis Network. This is episode 10, the final episode of season 1 of our series of interviews with people from the hepatitis community. My name is Carrie, and as always, I am joined by Daryl. Daryl, how are you today?
Real good. How are you doing, Carrie?
I'm good, thanks. And today we are joined by Cheryl and Joan, who were a big part of getting HepCBC started. And Daryl, do you want to say anything else to introduce Cheryl and Joan?
It's our pleasure today to have Cheryl and Joan from HepCBC, an organization that was started many years ago, and really we want to let them talk about the beginnings and the work of HepCBC. Thanks for coming here today to both of you.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you for coming.
I came into HepCBC much later than Joan. So Joan, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself?
I didn't choose to be in Hep C, anything to do with Hep C. It just happened. I was in Mexico at the time, and I had to have a transfusion. I had an ectopic pregnancy, which was, I don't recommend it for anyone, but I had to have several units of blood, and they had me sign a waiver at the time that I would not come back and reclaim if I got hepatitis. And I said, well, is it for sure? Well, do I have to get it? Yes, you will get hepatitis. Well, do I have a choice? Well, you can do that or die. So I chose to have the transfusion. And I asked them how long before I die. 20 years. Well, that'll get my baby raised and my excuse me, my kids raised and everything else. So I guess that's better than nothing. So I took the transfusion. And I said, but there's a cure, right? And he said, no, nothing. Interferon, maybe. I think they knew about interferon then. So I got my transfusion and I forgot about it until 20 years later. And I was diagnosed with hepatitis C, and I did my usual thing of looking up everything I could possibly get a hold of, and I ended up in Fcbc. Actually, it was HECS first, Hepatitis C Society of Canada. They visited us in Victoria, and that was the first group, and it went from there.
I was just curious. So it was your own experience that brought you to the work of starting HepCBC and continuing to work as an advocate for people living with hepatitis.
Definitely.
Which is true for so many of us that have worked in this sector.
Yeah. So Cheryl, do you want to introduce yourself, or Joan, do you want to introduce Cheryl? We can do either.
I can give her a little introduction. I met
Perfect.
Cheryl in my home in Victoria. I was holding a meeting there. I don't know why I was there, but it happened to be there. And I thought to myself, we need her.
It was mutual.
So
that's what happened.
Awesome. Cheryl, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
I came to HepCBC and to Joan's house that night because I realized, after having been diagnosed with Hep C many years before, that it was finally starting to affect me physically, and that I should probably find out more about it, and maybe there would be a treatment. And if not, there at least be some other people to share my experience with. And yeah, it was very exciting to meet Joan and all the other people in the room, who everybody had a story that was really compelling, and yeah, a lot of those people are gone now, and it's. Yeah, so, every day that we have is a gift.
So yeah. What year was that everyone kind of started coming together?
What was it about? I came to your house about 2007, maybe, or 7, I think.
It sounds about right. I guess 2008, if I had to choose.
Oh, okay, yeah. Wow.
But HepCBC and Joan had a very long history before that.
Actually, we were HEX before. We were members of HEX, Hepatitis C Society of Canada. And I think there was a funding dispute or problem. I think we had to be a provincial organization to receive funding, something like that. And so for whatever reason, we separated from HEX, at least legally,
Right.
and started up HepCBC.
You know, as far as I've understood, that HepCBC had a very significant and strong core group of volunteers doing the work. And you've now mentioned the meeting at Joan's house, but how did you all connect with each other initially? I mean, how did you all end up, having the meetings and getting together?
I think we met at first through HEX, Hepatitis C Society of Canada. We continued to be members of HEX, but we wanted a local organization for funding.
Got it.
I think I saw an ad in the Victoria paper that said something about a meeting and gave Joan's address.
Oh,
So
really?
I think this is like, it might have been the internet, but I think it was actually newspaper. I was really excited when I first joined up with Joan and the others, that there were other people who had the same kind of needs as I did, and same kinds of stories, and dealing with stigma. And yeah, it was really, really gratifying in a way to know there were others in the same boat, but it was also kind of scary, because there wasn't a cure at that point, but we were hoping there would be. And so working with other people to try to make that happen was really important. And we were all volunteers, and I think that kind of inspired us too.
What did starting HepCBC, what did the process look like?
We were members of HEX, Hepatitis C Society of Canada, and we kind of felt left out, being on the West Coast and everything, and we felt that we needed more attention, and so we decided to form a provincial group. Oh, and I think we had an offer of funding.
Oh, nice.
Little things like that.
Because it makes it a little bit easier to get started if you have some money in the bank, right? So that's definitely fortunate.
Just for context, when was HepCBC started? What year?
Affiliated with HEX, Hepatitis C Society of Canada, at first.
That was about 1996, 97.
That sounds about right. When David came into the picture, things changed. And he got us organized, basically.
There wasn't a great deal known about hepatitis C at that time. That must have been quite a challenge for you to get the word out. I mean, it's difficult even today, but back then it must have been a real challenge.
I think I had access to my father-in-law's big, thick medical book in Italian.
Wow.
And you read Italian, Joan?
Well, I speak Spanish, so yeah, I could learn enough to know that I had to get help.
Right. But as far as the information that was available to people that had been diagnosed or yet to be diagnosed was fairly limited, I'm sure.
Medically, it was okay, but I don't think the masses were able to get the information readily.
Or people that were living with it or had been diagnosed even.
Right.
I just wanted to toot Joan's horn a little here. Joan's started up the newsletter that continued for over 20 years. She faithfully put that newsletter out all that time, and it went all over Canada and eventually onto the website. And she took all the information that was coming out of the medical profession and she made it so the rest of us could understand it. That was incredibly
important. For our viewers,
important.
what was that called again?
Sorry, my 74-year-old brain isn't working here.
The name of the
Hep C Bull.
Of course. Yeah.
And just for anyone who is curious about that, every single issue of the HepC Bull is available online. And so HepCBC.ca goes to a legacy site that we've created to make sure that this history kind of continues. So if you go to HepCBC.ca, it will redirect you to a page where you can actually get all of the HepC Bull issues and all kinds of stuff like that. And if there's something in there that you're looking for and you can't find, please feel free to email us at hello@bchep.org and we can get you in touch with Cheryl or help you find whatever you're looking for, or Joan, or whoever, whoever you're interested in chatting with. We can certainly get you connected and get you the information from kind of their, I guess we would call them sort of like archives at this point in time,
Archives.
but the history of all the stuff that was happening. I think, if somebody were to be doing a project on the history of HepC, that would be probably a really valuable resource for them to be digging through, because you can kind of see as things unfold, right?
As a person myself who lived with hepatitis C, it was a valuable resource for me in real time. So
That's what it was for.
that's what it was for, indeed.
So I think kind of on that note, so we mentioned the HepC Bull, which was the newsletter. And so can you tell us a bit more about kind of the day-to-day work of HepCBC over the years? What kind of things that you focused on, and basically about the work you did and kind of how that unfolded?
Well, I was basically looking for information for myself. I wanted to get cured, and I wanted everyone to hurry up and find a cure. So I figured if it was going to help me, it was going to help everyone else as well. And so anything I found, I wanted to share, and the internet made that eminently possible.
Right.
And I gather that testing was a big part of that as well.
Of course.
Yeah, making sure that people knew that they should
get tested.
Yeah, I think we focused at the first part on people like Joan and myself who were baby boomers, and eventually we started looking more outwards towards some of the other populations, including the rural and indigenous populations, marginalized, and like urban marginalized, as well as remote, and then the prison population. So we kept changing our focus, broadening, I guess is a better word, broadening our focus, and that was what we worked on gradually over the years.
Cool. So like, and that was, like you said, gradual process. So you mentioned, the newsletter, the prison stuff, the getting information out into different communities. What were some like kind of specific projects that you might have worked on? I know that if you go to the HepCBC legacy site, there's a photo slideshow of a kind of like an awareness building sort of roadshow, right? Like, so what were some kind of specific projects?
Website for sure, and then road shows where we went into remote communities with nurses and patients who could explain their in a lot of remote communities, people were really hesitant to even admit that they had it. There was just so much stigma. So having somebody who come and say, "Oh, I've got Hep C and I'm okay," I'm working on getting treated eventually, or I have been treated, and just talking about it and admitting that you've got it, or even saying how you got it, which can be uncomfortable. That really meant a lot to help people start talking themselves, or not feeling that they were alone, because in a remote community, you just really feel alone, and you want to maybe get tested, but the person who you take the tests from, or who's aware of the test results, working in the office, is maybe your sister-in-law, or
right.
It's really hard. So yeah.
Joan, do you have anything to add about specific projects, or?
No, just that it was very interesting going out to the different communities, reaching out and seeing we got some of our best volunteers that way, actually. Even the prisons, we had one fellow come and work in our office afterwards. I don't know if you
Wow.
remember that, Cheryl.
I forgot.
I just want to mention that you also published a lot of print materials in different languages.
Yes. I did the Spanish.
Oh, that's awesome.
In one of my incarnations, I was a translation company owner. So I knew a lot about how to get things translated and had a few connections. So that was the story behind the various translations. But we had a lot of wonderful volunteer translators too. I wish we could have paid them because of all the work they put in, but I'd say thank you again to all you guys out there.
And Cheryl, you and I have talked about this, is that, we've been working to get more translated materials from BC Hepatitis Network, and it's a really daunting process when you get started. And like, we had finally realized that, you had all these resources, and then I emailed you and you were like, oh yeah, I used to own a translation business. And I was like, I just kind of like was just like, oh, like, very useful. So for us too, we've been able to kind of build on this wealth of knowledge and the skills, that very unique set of skills that everyone kind of has brought to HepCBC over the years, right? So that's been really good. And there was a lot of stuff that was, translations that were focused towards people involved in corrections, right? They were thinking of providing resources for people who are incarcerated, but we're just thinking of that kind of as a block, whereas you kind of were like, well, hold on, there's people who are incarcerated who English is not their first language, right? So like that's it was just like a really, incredible kind of thing for me to look back on in the history of like the work that you did and be like, oh, that's eye-opening for me to like look at the populations we're addressing at BC Hepatitis Network and be like, well, how can we do this better, right? So it's a great legacy for us to build on.
It's a work in progress.
Yes.
Well, one really interesting thing when you're dealing with populations is realizing that there's so much overlap.
Yes.
And like, you'll have people who are Vietnamese who are baby boomers, or people who are maybe Chinese, but they also live in a remote community. So I mean, you have to tailor your materials to one group, but make sure that you acknowledge and are prepared to for that overlap as well.
Yeah, like encompassing the potential and the large potential for intersectionality among those groups, right? Like that's great. Daryl.
Just wanted to say that it really speaks to just how widespread hepatitis C is, that reaches across all populations and communities.
And another point is that we did get into people who had hepatitis B. We added that as a population, and of course that is also an intersectionality issue. And there's a lot of overlap between hepatitis B and hepatitis C, but there's also some really important differences. So that was something that we were just starting to get into about the time that we retired.
Handed off the reins.
Yeah.
So I guess, and kind of, to go along with that, we mentioned a little bit about the prison population, and we know that there are a disproportionate number of people affected by Hep C who are incarcerated. So one project that we actually had a request for relatively recently was the HepCBC coloring book. And, we're told about the kind of success of that in provincial and federal correctional facilities in the province. Can you talk a bit about that? Because I think it's just such a unique project.
Yeah, that kind of just happened. It kind of just fell together. It wasn't like something that we thought about that much. It just, we got some artwork, and then we started adding on to it and thought, oh, why don't we make a coloring book? And anyway, it was actually a prisoner, a former prisoner who came up with the idea, and we just kind of went with it.
That's awesome. It's so funny too, because and think it kind of speaks to how humble you all are, but the work that you've done, because we've been working on kind of revamping and re-releasing the coloring book, and this has been a huge project for us, and you're just like, oh, just kind of keep together, right? So and I'm sure it was not nearly that easy, but it's great. I mean, we had a request for it come through, and we were just like, okay, well, let's figure out how we can get that going again, right? So it really speaks though to a number of years later that people still remember that and still want that resource available, right? So I think that's
Great.
really
Great.
exciting.
But I forgot about the helpline. Well, Joan started the helpline for HepCBC, and I don't know, Joan, if you still have your little message for people, but it was 24/7 with Joan for
She
many,
was
many
answering
years.
calls 24/7.
She was. And I did the helpline a little bit, but I think Daryl's taken it to a new level.
Well, I did it with the US for years, and
Right.
of course we took calls from Canada, but mostly it was US calls. And then when we were able to secure the funding from PHSA to do it here, that was good.
And with that though too, because you mentioned the helpline, but you specifically had at HepCBC a prison outreach line, and that for us, like, when you guys wrapped up your work and we kind of folded in some of the stuff that you guys were doing, was one of those tasks that Daryl and I had to take on, which was getting Help for HepBC linked into all of the phones and available to people who are in both provincial and federal corrections in BC, right? So that was great, a great part of the work that you did for sure, and that we have kind of inherited and are hoping to be able to continue to build on.
Right.
What were some of your greatest successes and challenges over all those years you were doing amazing work?
Well, I'll start with the bad stuff. The challenges, I'd say the two major ones were funding and stigma. What about you, Joan?
I agree with that.
Where was the stigma coming from specifically? Do you recall, or is it? And do you think that's changed?
I did everything I could to hide the fact that I'd never used IV drugs. I had to be accepted by the community. That was my challenge.
And mine was just the opposite. I did everything I could to let people know how I got it, which was from any number of things. I could have gotten it from, what do you call it? Gamma globulin, that's it. Gamma globulin shot when I was 10 to prevent the flu. Gamma globulin is a blood product. I could have gotten it when I was 19 and I did IV drugs twice, or I could have gotten it when a few years later I had Rh negative blood type. So after I gave birth, they found that I had to have a shot called Rogam. It's also a blood product. So I could have gotten it 3 different times from blood products or twice from recreational drug use. So I told people about that. I'll never know which way I got it, and it doesn't really matter. So that it was hard to do that, but I think it helped people to talk about it more,
Well,
because they felt they weren't alone, right?
Right. Would you say that your own experience, I mean, what you're talking about rings true for me as well? I don't know. There were a number of different, times in my life where I could have been exposed to the virus, but I don't know. And like you say, it doesn't matter because, of course, the stigma is the issue. But where did you feel the stigma was coming from? I'm just curious. Where was it self-stigmatization, you think, or was it the community that you lived in, or was it healthcare, the healthcare provider?
Well, yeah, all of the above. And as Joan said, it was really important for people to, like her, to let the world know, look, there's other people besides drug addicts who have this disease. And so it's important for us to be honest about things like that. But the stigma, part of it comes from yourself because you are part of society and you know what other people think. And
do you think it's improved? I mean, do you have a sense of that, or?
Probably, yeah, because I think the drug companies kind of took took up that theme of baby boomers having being eligible for testing and treatment, and so that eventually was taken up and broadcast in TV ads and things like that. But Joan, how do you feel? Do you think it's improved over the years, and why, if so?
I haven't felt it because I never used drugs, but I
Right.
think that HepCBC did its absolute best to ignore where anyone got it. And
Oh yeah, definitely.
yeah,
And people really appreciated that.
Yeah, I think we've seen incremental improvement in the area in recent years. More specifically, I think for a lot of years it was pretty bad, and it came from a lot of quarters, as well as self-stigmatization for many people,
Yeah.
not everyone. And as much as our stories share, there's commonality. We are individuals, and we all have different experiences in life, of course. It seems to be improving, and there's far more reliable, trustworthy information about hepatitis C now than there ever was in the past.
Well, and what's interesting too that I find is that so I'm 31, and when I talk to people who are my age about hepatitis C, I have found, at least among the people that I know, is that there's really no stigma because people don't know what it is, right? And
Yeah.
and that's, it's a very interesting shift though, right? Because if people, and I mean, the other thing is that people think there's a vaccine for hep C, which there's not, but it's just
old.
yeah, well, exactly. But I think that's the only thing that somebody who, say, in their 20s or 30s thinks they know about hep C. It's very easy to help them learn more in a way that is not stigmatizing, right? Because so hopefully that's a shift that will continue to improve, is that, if people who are my age now are kind of more or less a blank slate, you can educate them, you can get, encourage them to, get tested if they think they need to. And because it's curable now, and very, very highly successfully curable, it's, it's a much more positive message that you have to provide to people, right?
Well,
so
one of the really big things I've noticed, and I've seen this mostly on the helpline, but not exclusively, is that even in the area of drug use, substance use, attitudes have really changed.
Yep.
Fully half of the calls that we get on the helpline now are for people looking for safe supply. And
yeah, it was a huge leap for us, HepCBC, going from trying to make treatment, testing and treatment available to prevention. And I don't think we ever really got that much into the prevention piece. We were mostly focused on testing and treatment.
So the harm reduction piece really is what you're talking about.
Yeah, we kind of left that to others. I'd say we didn't emphasize put our work in that area. What would you say, Joan?
yeah, I think that wasn't our main goal. It was there were other groups that were funded by the government to deal with the IV drug users. We certainly welcomed them for support, and sometimes to our board meetings.
Just as an update to you both, if you're interested in what we've been doing since you've not been doing that, is we were doing a lot of work in collaboration with organizations that do that work,
Right.
not specifically doing harm reduction ourselves, really collaborating with them to bring testing and treatment to those communities or to those agencies that are providing services for those communities.
And it's definitely too, there's a huge value in that collaboration, because we know that they are not funded to do specific, hepatitis specific work.
No.
And we are not funded to do harm reduction specific work.
Exactly.
So when we partner to do that work together, it ensures that the staff on site at those places and the clients of those harm reduction organizations, other community-based organizations and services, the staff become aware. They share that awareness with their clients, who they already have a good relationship with, and they trust each other. And often, I think, Daryl, you've experienced the same thing kind of with that I've experienced when talking with my friends, is that the people working in those organizations, sometimes, depending on their role, they don't know a lot about hep C. So you are again starting kind of with that blank slate, and I think that probably also helps in that way to make it a non-stigmatizing environment, right? Because if they're starting from scratch, that's hopefully helpful for their clients when they reach out, right?
You asked about successes.
Yeah.
And I thought of three that really moved me, were really inspiring to me. One was, of course, when treatment became available. That was an incredible red letter day for everybody when it became funded. Yeah, that was really important. One of the really important successes, I think, was when the MLAs and the MPs were willing to actually be publicly tested. It helped publicize that treatment and testing were available, and it also was really good for fighting the stigma. You see your MLA get tested, well, maybe it's not so bad. I can ask for it too. Or you find out that there's more than one way to get Hep C, and the MLAs and one of the MPs as well made little videos that they shared, of themselves getting tested, and they all would say there's more than one way to get it. I might have gotten it, so this is why I'm doing this test. So that, I thought that was a real high point for me. And the third was the film Deal With It, and of course Deb Schmitz was in that film as well. And Deal With It, we were able to take it up north and show it in very, very remote communities. And I'd say one of the high points was showing it in this one community, and everybody from the community was there. We had money from a drug company to buy dinner, to buy the supplies, and they make the dinner or whatever. And they made this beautiful spaghetti dinner. It was for the whole community. There were like 40 or 50 people in the community. Everybody was there. They said it was because there wasn't anything good on TV that night. So we had this wonderful spaghetti dinner and chocolate cake. I mean, it was wonderful, and they loved the movie, and there were teenagers there and old people, and really there were babies. It was just great. And then at the very end, we wanted to give them money, and they refused it. They said, no, it's what we want to do for you, because we really appreciate what you're doing. And we just kind of cried when they told us that.
That's great. I mean, Cheryl, so a note for us, I guess, if we ever have a film screening, we need to make sure there's nothing good on TV that night. I forgot one more thing was the unbirthday party at the women's prison. That was a really great time that we had. That was one of our last things, and that was with Sophia. Oh, okay, yeah. Excellent.
How about you, Joan? What were your high points?
I think the visits to the communities outside our own were very enlightening and very inspiring.
So I guess kind of to wrap it up a little bit, and then we can do closing thoughts after this, of course, but so what are your hopes for the future for people affected by Hep C? And elimination of Hep C by 2030 is a core goal of the BC Hepatitis Network. And it really, though, it wasn't something that was considered a possibility when HepCBC started, right? There was, it was, imagine, I think at that point in time, if somebody had said to you, we might be able to get rid of this thing. And, elimination doesn't mean that there's no hepatitis C, but it's just significantly less prevalent and less of a problem to face, right? So kind of keeping that in mind and the trajectory of things over the years, what are your thoughts about the possibility of elimination of Hep C, and what thoughts do you guys have about how we can get there?
We got time for another one of these? I don't feel prepared to answer that question. Joan, how about you?
I've been out of the circle for quite a while. I haven't been doing any research, but I would think that the virus keeps on mutating to get around anything we invent. So I think that the need for treating people with hepatitis C and preventing the disease is going to be around for a while.
COVID certainly hasn't helped. I mean,
No.
it looks like, I mean, we don't have the latest data, but I mean, stands to reason access to clinics, et cetera, medical services has been, diminished because of COVID, but.
I think it's a wonderful goal, and I am sorry that I'm unable to really help achieve it anymore, but I'm here cheering everybody on.
Me too.
We're getting more of the point of care testing into communities. That's been something that I've been focusing my work on for a few years now, and carry together the two of us, and that's just growing really fast. It's great.
We really are building on all of the decades of past work that Pacific Hep C Network and HepCBC did, right? And like we talked about before, a lot of those relationships are what is going to get us there, right? So even though it may not feel that you're doing anything directly at this point in time, I think there's a huge testament to the legacy and the volume of work that was done in the past, and getting the word out and building those relationships that is going to be a huge piece of what we're able to continue to do, right? So I certainly just want to say thank you both for all of your work.
I just want to say a few words too, just that I admire and respect the work that you've both done over the years, and really has been foundational for the work that we continue to do. And thank you. Yes, I just would ask for any closing thoughts that you both may have.
Yeah, closing. We closed, didn't we, Joan?
That's what I was going to say. That's exactly what I was going to say.
It's a big closing thought for sure. But you didn't close really. You sort of folded into your work lives on forever.
Well, I would just say that it would have been a lot harder to close up the shop if we hadn't had somebody like you guys to pass it on to.
True.
Thank you so much for taking it on, and all the very, very best, and especially that goal of 2030 elimination. Like I said, we'll be here cheering it on, because Hep B and Hep C are both incredibly awful diseases, and thank God there are ways of testing and treating, maybe not curing the Hep B part, but hopefully we'll get there and eliminate hepatitis. So it's been quite a journey being part of it. So thank you very much, and
thank you.
Always feel free to, as long as we're still alive. I don't know how long that'll be, but as long as we're still alive, you can call us and we'll give our point of view.
Well, and I was thinking that too as you were talking about kind of closing shop and passing the work along, is that I really appreciated being able to reach out when when things come up that we're just like, hold on, okay, this was something that HepCBC was doing, and just being able to shoot off an email and find out kind of where stuff is, or what thoughts you have about the work, right? Because for me, I started doing Hep C stuff in 2019, so I have not been at it for very long, and it's a whole lot of information to soak in. I just I really appreciate the kind of continued willingness to be involved, even though you have closed up shop per se. You're maybe not doing it as much, but you're certainly not done, I would say, right? So
no.
Great.
I'm
All
just
good.
glad that you guys were here to take over. I had really done all I could, and it was time to take some time for me.
All right.
Okay. Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
There are so many people who are not here that that are still living or that aren't, both. And I'd like to dedicate this space to them, and I hope that some of them will also, you'll be able to interview some more of them in the coming months. And their perspectives are every bit as valuable, if not more so, than ours. So
Absolutely.
hope you can. Okay.
Certainly our intention to.
Yes.
So,
I was going to say, we're working on figuring out a way that we can get more perspectives without having to coordinate everybody into one space at one time, right? Because that's the challenge, is scheduling people. So we're working on something, and when that comes out, we'll certainly be sharing that with everyone. And so if you're listening to this and you want to hear more about the people who are involved with HepCBC, keep your eyes open and keep looking at our spaces online. And if you aren't sure if you missed something, again, email us hello@bchep.org, and we can get you connected with anything else that may have unfolded since we recorded this episode. This is actually our season finale for season 1 of Conversations with BC Hepatitis Network. So thank you to all of our guests and everyone who has joined us to listen over the last several months. And we're going to be coming back, and we look forward to sharing a new season of interviews with everyone. So stay tuned to this feed or our website, podcast.bchep.org, or the YouTube channel in spring 2023 when we launch season 2. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
take care, and thanks again, Joan and Cheryl.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Learn more about viral hepatitis and the BC Hepatitis Network by visiting bchep.org and contact us at podcasts@bchep.org. You can also find us on social media via the links in the show notes. For more episodes, visit bchep.org/podcasts or subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast app.